At 7:30 p.m., gunfire erupted in a busy Costco in Corona, California. Panicked shoppers either fled or took cover. Emergency services arrived quickly, but details were unclear. A family shopping was targeted by an off-duty LAPD officer. Corona, 50 miles east of Los Angeles, is known for Corona Farms and its Costco. By 7:30 p.m. on June 14, 2019, the store was quieting down. At 7:45 p.m., gunfire shattered the peace.
Corona 911, what's the address of your emergency?
We heard gunshots.
I'm at Costco on McKinley. There was gunshots.
Two people were down. There were shots fired.
The first officer arrived just over a minute later. Store employees directed him to a man on the floor, off-duty LAPD officer Salvador Sanchez. He seemed disoriented but unharmed, having aimed his weapon at 3 shoppers. Shoppers helped the wounded. Many dropped to the ground upon hearing gunfire. Others fled.
Walked back to the meat section and just immediately heard about 6 or 7 shots and got on the ground and made sure she was safe and on the ground. But she was, hysterical, of course. I crawled around to where she was and it was just hysteria.
Later, it was revealed 10 shots were fired from a Glock. Law enforcement rushed expecting an active shooter, finding a confusing scene. Shoppers were led to the parking lot by police. Many found their cars taped off, unable to leave. Meanwhile, social media buzzed with reports. Initially, police thought an argument escalated into a gunfight.
At about 7:45 this evening, we received a call of shots fired here in the Costco, located at 479 McKinley. Officers arrived, anticipating an active shooter situation. They went inside and counted 4 subjects down. There's 1 deceased male who has yet to been identified. There was 2 other adults with apparent gunshot wounds that have been transported to local area hospitals, and there was a shooter detained inside, and he has been transported to a local hospital. From my understanding, from some people we talked to, there was apparently an argument inside, some type of argument that ensued into a gun battle.
The incident left 32-year-old Kenneth French dead, and his parents, Russell and Pa, seriously injured. The family was at a sample table when Kenneth interacted with Salvador, causing him to fall and drop his son. Salvador told officers he believed he'd been shot and had seen a gun firing, leading him to draw his weapon.
Are you injured?
No, I guess not. I thought I got shot in the back of my head. I thought I got shot. I still feel pain in the side of my head. And I see a blast, and I feel my head just get knocked down enough for me to fall.
Do you have any weapons?
No, he's got it.
You don't have anything further? Are you hurt? Did you get shot?
I thought I got shot. I still feel pain in the side of my head, dude.
What?
On this side.
What happened? Tell me what happened. Tell me what happened. Tell me.
I'll tell you what
happened right now.
You want to pat me down? Go ahead.
Yeah, tell me what happened.
I'm standing here with my son getting samples. I'm holding my son.
Okay.
Right? The lady's telling me about his special that's going on.
Okay.
And
No evidence supported Salvador's claim of being shot. No gun was found near Kenneth, despite Salvador's assertion. The Corona police found no witnesses or evidence of a firearm with the family. Drones searched the store, confirming only shots came from Salvador's handgun.
Did you see a weapon?
you know what? I'm not going to talk any further without my lawyer.
Sanchez later told police he saw Kenneth with a small black compact firearm. After regaining composure, he told police he believed he saw Kenneth aiming a gun at him. Salvador had no visible injuries, but requested hospitalization, diagnosed with a concussion. No injuries or bruises were found. Of the 10 shots Salvador fired, 4 hit Kenneth French, 3 in the back and 1 in the shoulder. His mother, Pa, was shot in the back, and his father, Russell, was hit in the abdomen, losing a kidney. The remaining bullets ended up in display cases, and no one else was injured. Russell and Pa underwent surgeries and treatment for their injuries over months. Kenneth did not survive. Witnesses in Costco reported holding his hand as he died. The French family hailed from Kolkata, India. Russell and Pa married in 1986 and shared experiences studying at Tees University in the UK and living in Ontario, Canada. In Canada, Kenneth studied accounting at McMaster University. The family moved to Riverside, California, 5 years before the shooting. Kenneth had schizophrenia and an intellectual disability, living with his parents and having the mental capacity of a teenager. Recent concerns about fluid in his brain arose, and he had medical appointments for evaluation. Kenneth had been taken off his mental illness medication due to other health issues. The circumstances surrounding Kenneth's actions toward Salvador varied among eyewitness accounts. Some shoppers remembered the officer falling to the ground, while others saw no provocation. One witness described seeing Kenneth with clenched fists. Another heard Salvador's head hit the ground. Pa initially told responders that her son had hit the man at the sample stand, later referring to it as a slap. Due to trauma from her gunshot wound, she couldn't remember her statement's specifics. Salvador was not arrested and allowed to go home. The LAPD placed him on desk duty, then paid administrative leave. Surveillance footage did little to clarify the incident. The camera view was obstructed by store displays. The video didn't capture the initial interaction. Salvador remains out of view, with the footage showing Kenneth being pushed away from the sample stand by his father. Pa is briefly seen gesturing towards Salvador before quickly moving away. The footage shows the victims moving away from Salvador just before he opened fire. Investigators calculated 3.8 seconds passed from Salvador falling to the ground to him opening fire. He declared he was a police officer multiple times. After 2 months in the hospital, the French family began speaking about their experience, hoping to pressure the Riverside County DA's office to press charges.
Did you hear Sanchez say I'm a cop?
Oh, yes. Twice, three times, yes.
Loud?
Yes,
And then he shot right there.
absolutely.
I saw him make a motion, and it was to a person, obviously, whose back was facing to him. And then no sooner I had to focus on the man with the gun.
In response to public outcry, the Riverside County District Attorney's Office presented the case to a grand jury in September 2019. The panel chose not to indict Salvador Sanchez. After reviewing all the evidence, the grand jury determined no criminal charges should be filed. While shopping at Costco with his family, Salvador Sanchez was assaulted by Kenneth French. Sanchez fired his weapon, hitting Kenneth and his parents. To indict Salvador, at least 12 of the 19 grand jury members needed to find probable cause. While the grand jury's testimony is private, local media reported both Russell and Pa were questioned more about their son's medical history and potential temper than the shooting events on June 14th. Although not legally required to break charges, District Attorney Mike Hestrin chose not to press charges against Salvador Sanchez. I am not condoning the shooting. I'm not up here saying it was fine. That's not what I'm here to convey to you. I could file charges despite what the grand jury did. I'm not going to do that. This grand jury was attentive. They worked hard. They asked appropriate questions to our prosecutors, and they heard all the evidence that we have. The decision devastated the French family. Just out of the hospital, they had held Kenneth's funeral and were now hosting another press conference.
Our family has just taken another blow, and we have lost complete faith in the U.S. justice system.
Salvador Sanchez was clearly in the wrong, as he was not in imminent danger to fire 10 shots at an entire unarmed family.
I begged and told him not to shoot. I said we have no guns and my son is sick. He still shot. With civil rights lawyer Dale Gallipo, the family filed a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles at the end of 2019. They argued Salvador was negligent, acted as a policeman, and his professional training was lacking. They further argued Salvador invoked his governmental status as a police officer throughout the incident to influence behavior, allowing him to claim self-defense without justification. Kenneth, moving away from the officer, or at the very least, having his back turned when shot, contradicts the idea that someone was attacking me and about to kill me when I shot him. If Salvador Sanchez wasn't a police officer, he would have faced prosecution. During the civil trial, the family presented an animation by DK Global that illustrated the sequence of events. This animation filled in the visual gaps left by the surveillance footage. In the recreation, the French family can be seen walking towards the sample stand where Salvador was with his son. After a slap caused the policeman to fall, Pa, seeing the gun, begged him not to use it. All 3 family members were shot. In November 2021, an LA jury ruled in favor of the Frenches, awarding them slightly over $17 million in damages. By this significant civil court decision, Salvador Sanchez had also lost his job. The LAPD's internal investigation concluded the shooting was against their policy, and they terminated him. They determined another officer wouldn't have reasonably believed Kenneth French posed an imminent threat of death or serious injury. Such a threat would be the only justification for using force, deemed excessive. Salvador's lawyers contended the perceived threat by Kenneth was more critical than the actual threat at that moment. They argued he believed Kenneth had a gun, which was what mattered. They highlighted the significance of Salvador falling to the floor, saying it was pivotal to understanding his perception. Initially, the ex-LAPD officer told police he had lost consciousness after falling. His perception of being under attack was severe, believing he had been shot, with the brain impact causing him to think Mr. French was armed. For anyone in the LAPD to claim that the average LAPD officer wouldn't have reacted the same way is simply dishonest. You can't predict someone's reaction with a head injury. If you have a head injury, it affects you negatively. Dr. Daniel France from the Los Angeles Brain Science Project evaluated Salvador in 2021. After reviewing reports and witness statements, he concluded Salvador's actions were reasonable given the head injury he sustained. The doctor stated Salvador's perceptions and actions were typical for someone who had suffered a concussion or traumatic brain injury moments before, explaining why Salvador thought he saw a gun and believed the French family was attacking him. The doctor also noted that distorted memory and recall are expected after a head injury. He believed he had to use deadly force to protect his son and himself, and he fired the number of shots he deemed necessary. This could have been the end of the case in the courts, but the state attorney's office decided to intervene. The California Attorney General's office announced it would pursue charges where the county had declined. In August 2021, Salvador was charged with 1 count of voluntary manslaughter and assault with a deadly weapon, facing up to 30 years in prison if convicted. In response to the charges, Salvador's lawyer, David Winslow, accused the state of using the arrest as a political maneuver by California Attorney General Rob Bonta. He was an easy target, and they're going to use it for political gain. But trust me, he has the evidence to justify his actions. The case went to trial in late 2023. The judge ruled against allowing cameras in the courtroom, although some audio recording was permitted. Deputy Attorney General Michael Murphy told jurors that former Officer Sanchez did not make a reasonable assessment of the situation and immediately formed a false narrative in his head about what had happened. This included his belief that he was shot, that Kenneth had a gun, and that he lost consciousness after being hit in the back of the head. A reasonable person in his position, after being hit in the back of the head, would likely have said something like, "What happened?" before checking the back of their head for an injury, Murphy argued. He contended that Salvador, realizing the unreasonableness of his actions, fabricated the story of being knocked unconscious and seeing a gun pointed at him. It's a classic case of shoot first and ask questions later. The defense emphasized how quickly the ex-officer reacted after being struck by Kenneth French. Instead of seeing this quick response as an overreaction, they argued that Salvador had that time frame to respond to what he perceived as a life-threatening situation. Count 3 seconds. That's how much time my client had after being hit so hard that his head hit the concrete with a thump. That's how much time he had to assess the threat, identify the threat, and determine if the threat still existed. 1, 2, 3. According to the defense, the shooting was a tragedy, but likely a decision made by a father with a possible concussion after being attacked without reason. He was merely trying to tap the person from behind to understand the situation, believing he was under attack and still in danger from the individual who stood there with clenched fists, bent arms, and an aggressive demeanor. His aim was to protect human life, primarily his and his son's, especially the young boy. That's a reasonable response. He's not guilty, the attorney stated. Salvador did not intend to fatally shoot Kenneth or his parents. He only fired until he believed the threat had ceased, mentioning that his client still had 3 bullets left unfired. Pa French testified that she saw her son move someone aside with his hand, followed by a man claiming to be a police officer pointing and shooting at them. Russell told the jury that he fought to survive so that someone could testify to what happened to his son. "If all of us had died," he said, "this man would have been hailed as a hero." The jury began deliberations after Christmas, but by December 29th, they had not reached a verdict and sought clarification on several issues. The jury was scheduled to return after an unexplained extended break on January 18, 2024. Upon resuming deliberations, the jury sent a final note to the judge. They were deadlocked. Jurors had spent a total of 32 days without reaching a consensus. The judge declared a mistrial. Salvador's attorney, Michael Schwartz, later reported that most jurors had favored an acquittal, though he didn't have the exact numbers. The defense attorney described the incident as a tragedy, but not a crime. At this stage, he noted, the case has been presented to a grand jury without an indictment, and then to a trial jury without a conviction. He concluded by saying that it's time for all parties involved to move forward. However, moving on is proving to be a significant challenge for the French family. Russell and Pa's health continues to deteriorate due to their injuries, and they continue to grieve the loss of their son, taken from them too early. It now falls to the California Attorney General's office to decide whether to retry Salvador Sanchez. A hearing is scheduled for February 13, 2024, and that concludes the tragic story of Kenneth French and his parents, Russell and Pa.